Australia has laid out a new defence strategy, which sounds an alarm on China's growing influence in the wider Pacific region. The 80-page document outlines a mammoth plan in terms of defence goals, including a significant boost to its military capabilities. Roger Maynard has all the details.
This $50 billion increase in defence spending over the next decade will put the country's total defence spending at 2.4% of GDP within the next 10 years, which in monetary terms will total about 330 billion Australian dollars. That'll include spending on large investments in space and cyber, as well as the nuclear-powered submarine fleet to be built as part of the AUKUS agreement with the United States and Britain. Canberra has made clear that the object of the exercise is to promote peace, prosperity and security in this part of the world, not the protection of Australia's borders necessarily, but rather projecting defence power further into Asia. Australia's Defence Minister, Richard Marles, explained the government's strategy at the National Press Club in Canberra.
The optimistic assumptions that guided defence planning after the end of the Cold War are long gone. Our environment is characterised by the uncertainty and tensions of entrenched and increasing strategic competition between the United States and China.
So the message is clear. It's China's growing assertiveness in the region that is prompting this increase in defence expenditure. Mr. Marles said Australia's geography of our national security did not lie on its coastline, but lay much further afield. An invasion of Australia is an unlikely prospect in any scenario, he pointed out, because so much damage could be done by an adversary without having to set foot on Australian soil. Protecting trade routes was also a major consideration, especially given that 85% of its fuel supplies came from South Korea, Malaysia and Singapore. Australia's dependence on this sea line of communication, the rules of the road at sea, are everything for us, Mr. Marles added. This latest defence boost represents a significant advance in Australia's military capability, though there will be some who will argue it's not enough in an increasingly uncertain world. As an island nation, Australia not only has to look after itself, but is dependent on a safe and secure Indo-Pacific. As the Defence Minister declared, the defence of Australia does not mean much without the collective security of the region in which we live. Roger Maynard, CNA, Sydney.
Of course, Australia's Defence Minister naming China there, one reason for bolstering its defence. Well, we're joined by Olivia Xiong in Beijing. Olivia, how has Beijing reacted to Canberra's new defence strategy, especially at a time when China-Australia ties are in fact warming up?
So China has basically opposed this latest assessment and move by Australia, calling on Australia to view China's development and strategic intentions correctly. Its foreign ministry also saying that Australia should do more things that are conducive to creating peace in the region and to refrain from, quote, making accusations about China at every turn, and reiterating a long-held position. The foreign ministry said that China did not pose a threat to any country. Instead, it turned the blame on what it said were foreign powers, saying that the regional risks actually come from them trying to create exclusive small circles to create confrontation between camps, especially in the South China Sea, where we have seen heightened tensions. And while no specific countries were named, this language has frequently been used by China to describe the U.S. and its partners, which it views as trying to band together to contain its influence in the region. And we know that recently China has also been angered by those first joint drills held by the U.S., Japan, Australia and the Philippines in those disputed waters in the South China Sea, where there have also been several skirmishes, China responding with its own combat patrols. And as you rightly mentioned there, this all comes at a time as we have seen China, Australia ties, which had been strained in the last few years, actually come towards a point of stabilization. We saw China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi visit recently Australia last month for the first time since 2017. We are expecting the Chinese Premier to make a visit in June as well. And on the economic front, we had seen that rollback on tariffs that China had imposed on Australian goods when relations were rather rocky, especially on Australian wine. But now with this latest development, it remains to be seen whether the economic relationship can be kept separate from security concerns. Wei Su.
Olivia, you mentioned sensitivities in the South China Sea. Of course, another sensitive waterway, the Taiwan Strait, is seeing China sending fighter jets after U.S. reconnaissance planes that flew over the Taiwan Strait. And this just hours after defense ministers from both sides, the U.S. and China, had a phone conversation. What more can you tell us?
That's right. We have this statement here from the Chinese military, which said that it organized fighter jets to shadow and warn the U.S. aircraft that was flying over the Taiwan Strait. This is a similar counter move by China that we have seen in the past, and China has said that it is acting according to the law and regulations. Beijing, we know, claims the self-ruled island of Taiwan as part of its territory and said that the troops there remain, its troops remain on high alert at all times and will resolutely safeguard its national security. The U.S. on its part, though, saying that it is upholding freedom of navigation. And the timing of this move certainly awkward, given that earlier in the day we had just heard about that first phone call between the defense ministers on both sides. Not only was this the first time that the two defense chiefs are speaking to each other, in fact, it's the first time that there has been any sort of substantial engagement between the top defense chiefs between both sides since 2022. The last time was when Mr. Austin, the U.S. Defense Secretary, met then Chinese Defense Minister Wei Fenghe, and there's been no formal meeting since then. Also, given that the previous Defense Minister of China had been sanctioned by the U.S., so this phone call would have been seen as a positive step. But we do know that China, in its readout, talked about warning the U.S. about its involvement with Taiwan, saying that there will be no compromises on that front. Wei Su.
And thanks to Olivia Xiong speaking to us there from Beijing.